Hello, and welcome to Data Management Module 2. This module will be devoted to learning a little bit more about SQL, also known as SQL. For the entire module, we'll cover topics such as creating tables, inserting and deleting data, querying a single table, using common commands for retrieving data, built-in functions, calculating values, subqueries, matching expressions on text data, and grouping and ordering data. The total of the module will be broken into 5 subparts. As a reminder, for additional resources to help you learn SQL, there's the MySQL Workbench video, MySQL Workbench manual, and then the W3 Schools SQL tutorial. Also, as a reminder, when you start preparing the assignments, those involving SQL, I will ask you to format them in the following manner. First, display the question that was asked. Second, select your SQL code in your Word document. And then third, do a screen capture of the results of your query. I also want to remind you that the database that we're going to be using for some of the examples in Module 2, and also all of the examples that are shown in the Watson text in Chapter 3, is available to you in Canvas. You find the appropriate document. It's called Watson Chapter 3.docx. Open that document. You'll find Create Table and Insert commands. Simply copy and paste those into MySQL Workbench and run them. That will create a table called Share, which will contain the data that you need for looking at the examples. Okay, why don't we get started with Module 2, Part 1. In this module, we're going to review some database components, learn how to create a table and the different data types that are available when you do so, how to insert data, and also could provide an introduction to basic SQL queries and the query structure. In terms of reviewing the components of a database, you recall we use the terms such as entity and attribute. In this particular context, what is table refer to? Well, the table is the structure that we're going to use for storing data. And again, you can think of it like a two-dimensional array or a worksheet in a spreadsheet. In this case, when we created the table using MySQL Workbench, you can see from the screen capture that we've got a table called Share. An instance is simply a single record or row for whatever it is that we're storing data about. In this case, we're storing data about shares for specific companies. And the instance would be something like Google. All of the information stored in the table about Google would represent a single instance. Entity is simply the name that we provide for something we're trying to store data about. In this case, we want to store data about shares. And so the entity would be a share. In many cases, like this one, the table name and the entity name will be the same. Attribute is simply something that we're trying to record information about a specific entity. So in this case, you can think of as columns of data. So the name of the firm, the price of the share, the quantity of shares outstanding, all of these are attributes of the share. For primary key, we need something to uniquely identify each record or each instance within the table. In this case, we're using share code as a primary key. What that means is each value of share code, such as GOOG, is unique and is only going to appear once in the table. Some of the basic commands we are going to be using at the table level, we can create and delete tables, or in this case drop. At the record level, we can think of it in terms of CRUD, which stands for create, read, update, and delete. In this first module, we're going to focus primarily on the read commands, or querying of data from a table. In order to create the table, we use the create table command. So you can see here we've got create table share. We've got each of the attributes listed. In addition, for each attribute, we have to define what that attribute is going to be stored as, how the data is going to be stored in the database. So in this case, we're saying share code. We're going to use 4 character values. What that means is we can't have more than 4. And we're going to be able to store character values as well as numeric. For something like share price, which we're defining as decimal 6.2, it means a total of 6 values with 2 decimal places. And then notice as well that we're defining the primary key as share code. Every database management system allows you to define different types of data. So here we've got examples of numeric, string, datetime, etc. The reason that we define different types of data is that we want to be able to, for example, do calculations on numeric data, so we need to define it as numeric. We want to be able to do some kind of comparisons on dates, well, we need to define it as a date. Different relational database management systems provide different specific choices in terms of how you define the data. So Microsoft SQL Server, for example, provides you with 4 different options in defining integers. And you can see here they range quite a bit in terms of the number of characters that are going to be stored and how much storage space they require. Why do you think organizations like Microsoft allow users to have so many options when they're storing data in the database? Well, in this particular case, having these options allows the database designer to say, wait a minute, for something like code, I don't need to allocate a large amount of space to that. So by setting the smallest size that will accommodate the maximum length possible for that value, for that attribute, it allows the database designer to save storage space. And it also speeds up retrieval of data. So it makes it more efficient for storage and for retrieval. To insert data into a table that has already been created, we can use the insert command. You can see the first example here, we've got insert into share. Then each of the columns or attributes are listed. The values command then says, okay, take these values and put them into these attributes. So, for example, FC would be stored as a share code, Fredonia Copper as a share firm, and so on. The listing of the attributes is optional. So the second option we've got here would also work. The only caveat is we have to make sure that the values are listed exactly the same way, in the same order, that the attributes were listed in our create table command. As long as that holds, we can leave those off. Our basic retrieval or SQL query retrieval structure is select some attributes from one or more tables where certain restrictions apply. So the attributes are the columns we're interested in retrieving and seeing in the result. The table name is the list of tables where the data is being retrieved from. And then restrictions are criteria that says, okay, we only want certain records or certain rows. An asterisk is basically a wildcard. So if you say select asterisk, it means I want to select all attributes from that table. So here's some samples that illustrate the basic SQL query structure. So select star from share, select share firm, share PE from share, select share PE from share where share PE is less than 12. Just as a reminder, if you wish, you can copy and paste. Once you've created your share table using the data, the create and insert commands, If you wish, you can copy and paste these commands into MySQL Workbench and run them to see what your response you'll get. But we can go through that here. The first one, select star from share, basically says select everything, which means give me all of the attributes and all of the rows, all of the records. So it'll basically display all of the information that's stored in the table. In the second one, we're saying select share firm and share PE from share. What that does is say, okay, I want to select these two attributes. Since I don't have any constraints on here, I want you to give me all of the rows. And over here on the left, it shows what that response would look like, what the result would look like. In the third example, select star from share, where share PE is less than 12. What we're doing there is saying we want all of the attributes, so we're using the asterisks, but we only want certain rows and records, and those are the ones where the share PE is less than 12. And you can see in our result, all the share PEs listed are less than 12. So let's basically combine 2 and 3 from the previous slide. So select share firm, share PE from share, where share PE is less than 12. What would you expect to get if we were to run this query? Well, we're going to get these two attributes listed, so share firm and share PE, but instead of listing all of them, we're only going to get those where the share PE is less than 12. Basically, the records that are shown here on the right. And that's the end of screen capture 1.